All right, welcome back. We're going to make our first part today. So we're starting with that Lego master file that we just made, and now we're going to make a 1x2 brick. So first thing we want to do is we want to do a save as. So we're going to do this as a plate. It's going to be a 1x2. And again, this file is just for dimension purposes, so we can check all the stuff that we make here as we go. I'm going to turn off that first sketch. And I usually make a sketch from scratch to get started. So I'm going to typically go from this top plane. I'm going to build it from the ground up for most of my parts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle that's Lego base by Lego base times 2. Finish that sketch, extrude. We're going up partial height. We're going to create a new sketch on the top surface. Make sure you highlight that top surface. And then we're going to create a line down the middle and a line down the middle this way. And we're going to create some circles here. And then we're going to set them equal to each other. I need to turn them back to object lines, so I'll click on it and then hit X to toggle that. This is going to be stud diameter. Now again, if I'm going a little fast, the great thing is you can pause the video. But I would encourage you to watch the video one time through so you can see it, and then you can go do it. And then we're going to use the symmetry constraint to say that these two are symmetrical about that line. And there we go. There's our two studs on the top. We're going to extrude those. Stud height. So again, I can just start typing stud, then use my arrow, down arrow, and then hit enter, and then enter again. Oh boy, what happened there? Well, it looks like I forgot to multiply that by 3 by scale on my stud height, and there it is. So I'm just going to change my parameter and put it times, not times 3, sorry, it should be times scale. And then say OK, and you'll notice that it automatically updates that value, which is pretty sweet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that Lego master file because I want to make sure that it's in there. So I'm going to go to change parameters and just add a times scale in there because I'm going to use this file for all my other ones. So I want to make sure that that's correct. There we go. There's the top part of the Lego. Now we're going to do the underside. So I'm going to create a sketch on the bottom. And then I'm going to project the geometry to the other side. So if you can't right click and drag to orbit, if you go into your preferences, you can scroll down and change your pan zoom orbit shortcuts to Tinkercad style and make sure your orbit type is free orbit. And when you do that, it allows you to right click and rotate or right click and move. Like I'm holding down the right mouse button so I can see the top side. P is for project, and I'm going to project the entire, you could do just the individual circles, but sometimes I just click on the face and it does it all at once and say okay. Now I've projected all that geometry to the bottom, which is what I need. I'm going to look at the bottom again. By the way, this look at feature is also really good. So if you click on look at and you pick the face, it'll square you up to that face. We're going to use our rectangle tool, and I'm going to turn it to construction because this one I'm going to put around the part or around these studs. So this is all the stuff we did with our master file to get dimensions, and now we're just doing it for real. Going back to the rectangle tool, actually no, we're just going to do an offset. Make sure it's not in construction. And this one is curve divided by 2. And then I'm going to turn these to construction lines because at the end of the day, I don't want to see those because when I extrude through there, I'll show you why if you don't turn them, what happens. I'm going to create a line between these 2 points just so I have a reference. And now, again, hit escape to get off that tool. I can put my circle in here. And then I'm going to do my offset. Again, make sure it's not a construction line here. And this offset we said was curve times 5/4. And again, if you don't have those memorized yet, that's okay. That's why we can go back here and pull up in this. And now we've got this as a reference. And we can say, okay, what should that offset have been? And there it is, curve times 5/4. Sweet. So I can check it. And that's it. That's all we need. We're going to finish the sketch. We're going to do an extrusion of this part. And this is where hole depth comes in. So we're going to go minus hole depth, and it's going to cut up into the part. Now, if you look at a Lego, and you look at the underside, it doesn't look like this. You have these holes that essentially go up into the little studs here on the top. That's because of the injection molding process. They're essentially using a shell to make these parts. Because we're 3D printing these parts, most of the upper section here is just air because we're using an infill of about 8% when we print. So it's not a solid part. If you're going to make this a solid like brick of plastic, absolutely. Like you have that extra detail because you want to save money on materials. But for us, it's mostly hollow anyway. So there's really no need to do that extra detail that goes in, and that is true for a lot of the parts that we're going to make at 3X. We don't need to have that extra detail because it's not really used in the building of the normal Lego. Now, if there's some weird funky connection that uses that little underside circle, then yeah, we might use it then, but really not. Essentially what they're doing is you can take your piece and then they're using a shell tool and they're saying, okay, this is the underside, and they're saying, what is the thickness of the shell? And I don't know what it is. Let's just say it's 0.2. And then when they do that, you can see that it models that underside, the cutout with those little circles there. We're not going to do that. We're not using the shell tool to make our stuff. The final thing that we need to do is we need to do a face offset and remove the air gap around this. So I usually do this at the end, or when if I'm going to add something to this, sometimes one of the faces does not get offset and 3 of them do, or maybe only 2 of them get offset. So it just really depends on the part. But this is the point at which that I want to do a face offset around the whole part. So I can go to modify and do an offset face, and I'm just going to select the 4 faces and do a negative kerf, so it shrinks it up, and you can see that movement there. So if you did kerf, it makes it bigger. So you can see it widens it. If I do negative kerf, it squeezes it down. I'm going to say OK. And then the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little chamfer on each of the edges that actually accept another Lego. So just to help it insert into this, and it's just going to be kerf times 2. So again, you can see it's a little chamfer on those edges where we would interact with another Lego, inserting into it or inserting into another Lego. And I'm going to say OK. And this is the final check that I do, is I do an inspection of my critical dimensions. So I is your inspect tool. So I click on I and I click this right here and I get 0.937. So if I back over to this one, you can see that should match what's the outer dimension of my part. It should be 0.937. And then my should be 1.882 going this direction. So I can hit I again. I can see it's 1.882. Hit escape. Hit I again. I can measure the diameter of this. And the diameter is 0.576. So we're just checking. That number should be pretty much ingrained in your head, because that's what that stud diameter is. But there it is, 0.576. We go back, and now the underside. Again, do an inspect of this. We should get 0.379. So you can see right here, there's my 0.379 for that middle cylinder. And then here's the inside dimensions that I should get. 1.517 should be the inside squeeze, and then this one here should be 0.572. So let's check those. So we're looking for 0.572 for this dimension right here. Bingo. And then we're going to hit escape and we're checking this dimension here, and we get the 1.517. The last we can do is make sure that our studs are one Lego base apart. So if we do an inspect between here and here, it should give me that 0.945, which is our Lego base dimension between those studs. And that's it. This looks like a great part. This is our first one. Most of our other parts are very similar to this when it comes to our flat plates. We're essentially making this. You can also do some really cool things with rectangle pattern. You can actually make this into a parametric brick. So all you have to do is type in how many studs you want to go this way and how many studs you want to go this way, and then you can make any plate based on that. I'm not going to do that today. I think sometimes it's easier on a video just to show you, okay, here's our basic skills, and now let's make some parts. But at this point, you want to 3D print this, and you want to 3D print 2 of them, and then check the fit. Does it fit on there nice and tight? And if you put, for example, I'm going to make an assembly file here. So I'll create a new file. We'll do a hybrid design. And then I'm going to import this into that design. So we'll call this assembly test. And then we're going to right click and insert this into the current design. We'll say OK, and then we'll do another one. So now we have 2 parts. And here's the one that you want to make sure works when you put a single one of these onto this. So for example, if I want to do a joint of this piece right here on the top of this, and then you're like, well, that doesn't fit right. Well, if I move it up partial height, it will. So I'm going to do a negative partial. Oh, it doesn't know what partial height is because I didn't start with the Lego base. So partial height is 0.125 times scale. And there it is. And then we're going to make this a revolute for right now. Say OK. So I want to check this fit right here. When I put 2 bricks in this and I rotate it and then kind of hold the Lego in this orientation right here, if it stays, great. Like if I can rotate this part and I can put it like in this position, or I can rotate it down and it stays, and it basically stays in any of these spots, then I know that my fit is pretty good on that. If it's loose and kind of wiggles free, then I might want to change some things. Either the outer kerf to make it tighter, or making this cylinder in the middle a little bit tighter. And that really depends, when you put it like this and you lock those 2 pieces together, how tight is that? If that's pretty tight, then I would say increase your cylinder in the middle so that it's only affecting 1 point of contact instead of 3 points of contact. Because remember, you have the stud is here, 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 and here when it makes contact. So if you were to shrink these walls, then 3 of the sides get adjusted. If you increase this one, then it only affects 1 side of the circle. So that's the adjustment that I would make once you make these bricks. Make sure they fit, and then now you're ready to start some more designing. So that's how you make bricks. That's our 1x2. We're going to make another video to start going through some of the bigger plates and how you can take this file and be pretty quick about making about 10 parts of this kit we can make in about an hour, maybe less, if you get really good at it. But always remember, stop watching, start making. Now go build something. Have a great day.